Once again, it is that time of the week where we get to review the movies that have just came out yesterday. And this week we have Kick-Ass 2, Jobs, and Paranoia. Now I want to start off with Kick-Ass 2. Now let me just start off by saying this, critics and all that, we're not a big fan of the latest Kick-Ass movie. Rotten Tomatoes has actually given it a score of 28%. And honestly, and I watch a lot of YouTubers like Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman, Schmozno, and, they definitely disagree with, especially Chris Stuckman, who, let's face facts, here's the thing, if you liked the first movie, you're going to love this one, for sure. Now, depending on whether you like it more than the first one, or you don't like it as much as the first one, you're still going to enjoy this movie no matter what, and I definitely enjoyed the movie. I like the first one, I definitely liked the first one. It was a different type of breed of like a superhero context movie, and for that, bringing in kind of like ultra-violence. It's like a Clockwork Orange, but made out of a superhero context. Even though, to me, it's not really a superhero movie. A superhero movie is like is a movie that takes on the paranormal standards, like Spider-Man, or, really, to me, it's like someone who's either based off a comic book or has special abilities. Does Kick-Ass have special abilities? Well, he can fight. Does he have superpowers? No, but that's just me. But anyway, that's getting off topic to my review. Let's talk about Kick-Ass 2. Now, in Kick-Ass 2, you have Kick-Ass and Hit Girl, who definitely stole the show in the first movie. Well, Hit Girl anyway. They become hugely popular, and plus they both teamed up, to help stop all the forces of evil and all that. And they end up forming an alliance with all these superheroes that want to join, and they're building like their own army as well, who is led by Colonel Stars and Stripes, who is played by Jim Carrey. Now, here's the thing, people were really surprised that Jim Carrey is going to be in this movie. One, for this fact that, he hasn't been promoting his movie because of the marketing and all that. But nevertheless, I still liked him as Colonel Stars and Stripes. I don't really pay towards the media or like their personal lives. I just care about, what they do in movies and stuff like that. Now, Jim Carrey in this movie, I really liked him in this movie. He was a great actor. But definitely, really, my biggest flaws with characters like this, and this goes along for other characters in other movies that, these supporting characters that you put in these sequels, or something like that, you want to see more of. And that's really my biggest flaw with Jim Carrey's performance. You want to see him more. Yeah, he was in there for a pretty good amount of time, sort of, but you just feel like you didn't get enough of Colonel Stars and Stripes. It's kind of like Chuck Norris in The Expendables 2. He was in for one scene during the middle of the scene where the whole shootout, and then he shows up kind of back in the end. You did not get enough of Chuck Norris in The Expendables 2. You still liked the movie, but you didn't get enough of him. That's how I felt with Jim Carrey in this movie. I wish he could have been in more. Maybe they'll make Kick-Ass 3, and hopefully he'll be in it a lot more if he gets over his violence phobia or whatever the heck whatever his problems are. But anyway, let me get back on top. Now, definitely Hit Girl in this movie definitely still is the best part of the movie. She does still every scene that she is in. She definitely did in the first one, but here's the difference between her and this one and then her in the first one. The first one, you introduce this girl, and she's really just like, 12 years old or something like that. She's not even that old. And when you see a little, just a young girl like that, it's just really shocking. But no, now you've seen this, you kind of know what to expect, but she is definitely getting a little bit older. And really, that's how I felt with her performance in this movie. I just felt like, it didn't necessarily add any huge element to the story in any way, shape, or form, but you knew you're getting back to your typical routine from the first movie. Just the fact that she's older and a little bit more potty mouth. But anyway, and let me just say this also. Aaron Taylor Johnson as Kick-Ass, I felt kind of weird at first. He's okay for Kick-Ass, but it feels like he could be in a play by anybody, but that's just me. But honestly, no one really cares. It's the fact that, the movie still entertains us in any way, shape, or form, whether it's from the ultra-violence or the comedy or whatever. I will say that the movie does try to put on a little bit of those, kind of like those drama moments. Like those movies where you always, no matter what genre it is, they always try to throw in a little bit of drama. And, honestly, it doesn't really do the movie justice. That's kind of how I felt with this movie. And definitely, going back to Hit Girl, she's in high school now, and she has to, deal with living his life as a superhero, and then also having to deal with high school and all that. And it's definitely a major hassle for her. Now that, it actually pretty worked well with the story that they were trying to go. Now, this movie is definitely not directed by Matthew Vaughn, who also directed X-Men First Class, but it is directed by a guy named Jeff Waldo or something like that. I've never heard of the guy. But still, definitely, he does stay true to Matthew Vaughn's Kick-Ass movie, and honestly, it does stay true in every way. And I really like that with this movie, they don't really necessarily try to change it so much. Just because it's made by Universal now doesn't mean it's like going to be completely different from the first movie. I mean, they still pay homage to the first movie, even though with its kind of crappy, well, not necessarily crappy, but kind of cheesy green screen effects. I mean, you can tell that from the first movie. It still has a little bit of that in this movie, but what makes the movie pop is its ultra violence, and that's really the best part of this movie, honestly. And it's a fun movie. It's a fun summer movie. It's like a fun popcorn movie. Just kind of kick back, relax, and just have a good time with. Now, Kick-Ass 2, I'm probably going to go a 7.5. I thought it was a fun movie. I thought it was exciting, There are definitely elements in this movie that I really like. Some of them, they just kind of withdraw from, the whole point of these movies, or kind of withdraw from the first Kick-Ass movie. But nevertheless, I still enjoyed Kick-Ass 2. I definitely think it's a summer movie that is really meant to be fun and just all out there and whatever else. I really enjoyed and liked Kick-Ass 2. Now let me get on to Jobs. Now Jobs is a movie, let's say this, I think every one of my friends, who's heard about this movie, it's like, this is like going to be the next Social Network. Well, yeah, it tries to be like Social Network, but it's nowhere close to Social Network. Because if you've seen Social Network, you know how the movie is. It's something completely different, like a biographical picture that really just amazes the audience and intrigues the audience with its dialogue, especially the most. And the fact that the character development and the character interaction between them and the Social Network really works so well. Do you get this in this movie? Not really. Because for one thing, it's not the Social Network. Quit comparing this movie to the Social Network. Yes, it has one of the biggest, biographical people, like one of the biggest innovators in the world, which is Steve Jobs. And the guy who created Apple, and he's all in this huge conflict with Apple and all that. And that's really what this movie is. This movie really is Ashton Kutcher's portrayal of Steve Jobs and the relationship between Apple. And I will definitely compare this movie to The Social Network in some sense, so I can tell y'all not to interfere with this movie with The Social Network. Here's the thing, The Social Network, it wasn't just about the creation of Facebook. It was about, really just more like the limits people are going to go to do this or to do that. It's all about the friends who you can trust and who you can't trust. This movie really doesn't have anything like that. And honestly, even if they did like that, I'd be like, they're ripping off Social Network, but at least they're doing it right. But honestly, you don't really feel that in this movie. You just feel kind of like a generic story between Steve Jobs and Apple. You don't really feel so much a relationship between him and any other characters, really. While it does try to be something completely different from said aspect of biographical movies, it just doesn't really feel quite right with me, and it doesn't really feel quite right with an audience with this movie. I mean, I will say this. Let me start with some of the positives about this movie. Ashton Kutcher. Honestly, I didn't think he would be perfect for the role at all. He's not the best actor in the business. But let's face it, he's probably better off playing Kelso from That 70s Show. I love that show a lot. It was a great show. But in this movie, he really surprised me. Ashton Kutcher, you wouldn't think of a guy to play someone like Steve Jobs through a movie like this. But, he, and like someone said before, he's taken a really ballsy move to do a movie like this. And he really did, and he actually did pretty good. I actually really liked Ashton Kutcher's portrayal of Steve Jobs. I wouldn't necessarily fully convince that Ashton Kutcher's like, oh my god, it is Steve, he is Steve Jobs, that's like, I'm not saying that's like the movie role he's going to live out for the rest of his life, because definitely he's not, and plus he's still young and he's still got a ways to go. But, he definitely impressed me, taking a ballsy choice to play the role of Steve Jobs, and he honestly did very well with his role. I really liked him. I thought he was pretty good, and even the walk, he even got the walk right. And, that's definitely one thing, too, And that definitely shows how much an actor's willing to go to do something right. And I really think he did pretty well with his role. Now, here's the thing also, the other characters are great. Like Josh Gad's character, J.K. Simmons' character, who, if you don't know, is on those Farmers commercials and also played James Jonah Jameson in Spider-Man, in the Spider-Man movies. Well, not the Andrew Garfield one, but the Tobey Maguire ones. You know what I'm talking about. He was great in this movie. All the actors, they're really good. It just feels like the source, but here's the problem with this movie. It feels like the source material is just a mess. It just feels kind of all over the place. Like, while there is some, while they do reel in the fact that, Steve Jobs was a bit of a butthole at times, which apparently he was. I never really knew that much, but he was, about, this whole Apple situation that he's in. And really, they really exaggerated it. And they really kind of went over the boards with that source material. And then there felt like there was some aspects of the source material that they didn't use enough of or didn't get to. Like the ending scene, trying to pay homage to Steve Jobs, they just didn't. I just didn't feel like this was an ending. This wasn't like the memory. This just didn't feel like it was in memory of Steve Jobs. It just felt like a movie about Jobs. You didn't feel like you were following his full life with you. You just felt like I said before, only the relationship between Steve and Apple, and which has really bogged me. Because yes, that is kind of a big part in this movie. Just a little bit, but not much. But though you want the bigger parts to be between the character development, between the character interaction, and that's what it didn't get enough of at all. There was a little, it feels like, like the character interaction, like, it's like it was there, but you couldn't feel it. It's like, okay, it's right there, but why can't I feel anything? You just don't feel it in this movie. You're just like, it's really him in this, this company that he's fallen in love with. It feels like he's a heartless bastard. Really, it's honestly how I think he feels, but that's just me. But anyway, from that standpoint, that it really withdraws from the movie. And like I said before, there are some good performances. There are, some of the source material, they do pay homage to, like some of it, like him being a butthole. It was just really exaggerated. And then there's some that honestly weren't enough of, and then there was some source material that honestly I think could have been in this movie. Now, hold on real quick. I think I got a text from somebody. Yes, I did. It's my mom. It's okay. But anyway, like I was saying. Hold on. Right in the middle of the video. And no, I'm not going to go back and redo this. This is why I don't edit my videos. I just go with the flow. Anyway, like I said before, there are some good aspects of this movie. There are some bad aspects of this movie. It's not a terrible movie. It just feels like it just loses its focus. It just loses its feel. You just don't feel much for the character of Steve Jobs. Even though Ashton Kutcher is really trying hard to give a good performance, you just don't feel much of him as Steve Jobs. You just really only feel what the movie tells you to feel, and that's honestly not saying much. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this movie a 5. I didn't feel, I just didn't feel right with this movie. It's just not a movie that was exactly for me. It's not a movie that you shouldn't watch. It's rewatchable. You can watch it like on a Saturday night or something like that, or maybe a Saturday morning even, but it's not like it's a movie that's gonna do anybody justice at all. Now let me get to the final movie of the week, Paranoia. Now, if you remember my trailer review, which honestly you can click right here, I was definitely not really looking forward to this movie. It didn't really feel like it was going to do anything. Like the director of this movie, he's made movies like 21, which is honestly, it was okay. And then you had Killers, which honestly kind of failed as a comedy. And this movie, I will say this, I was really surprised about the Rotten Tomatoes score for Paranoia. You know what it got? 2%. 2% out of, oh my gosh. When you feel like a movie's like that, it's gonna be pretty bad. But honestly, I don't think this movie was exactly, like a 2 out of 100, so to say. I definitely feel like this movie, for sure, I didn't think this movie was gonna be good at all. For sure, I didn't think it was going to be terrible either, but honestly, I felt like it was in the middle of that and just really not a good movie. It's just like it's just a forgettable movie. How can you forget this movie? Easy. It's on the ride home, honestly, that's how I felt. And I honestly focus more about like Kick-Ass 2 and Jobs, those are movies that I will remember from this past year. Paranoia is a movie that's just gonna go right through your head. And it's supposed to star Liam Hemsworth as this guy, who works for Gary Oldman. They apparently got fired, and then Gary Oldman decides to make him work for his competition, which is Harrison Ford. And it's really just this big, huge feud between Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford's companies. And really, it's definitely unoriginal. Definitely, you can say, because the director of this movie, he has his own style. He likes to tries to take different styles of movies. He tried 21, and he actually did pretty okay for that. And then he tried to do Killers, which honestly failed miserably. And then now he's doing Paranoia. And honestly, it felt like it was trying to be more of a dramatic 21 for me. If you haven't seen 21, go check it out. You probably know what I mean. I mean, that's just me. Probably no one even remembers 21, which honestly, I wouldn't blame you. I mean, it's not that big of a movie anyway, and neither is this movie for sure. I feel like I said, you know, I was like, when I was thinking about, okay, so we have to review Kick-Ass 2, Jobs, I'm like, what's the other one? Oh yeah, Paranoia. You know, that's how I felt with this movie. Now, let me just start off by saying this. Let me stop saying that, like, you know, you're going to forget this movie. Let me get down to, here are some of the basics why I think you'll forget this movie, you know. Liam Hemsworth is the main character. You don't feel anything for this guy. He didn't bring his A game at all. You don't feel anything. He wasn't like Gale from the Hunger Games, who actually brought a little bit of the story as a supporting character. But now the fact that he is a leading character in a movie like this, you don't feel anything. And plus the whole espionage part of the story, you don't feel it at all. You just feel like, this is, you know, just feel like, oh, it's gonna be like that, you know. And then also like Amber Heard, who I do think is very hot and attractive. I think she definitely could do better from this movie. She definitely can do better, and I think she will do better, hopefully in other movies in the near future. I think the director of this movie is more like a laid-back director. He doesn't really try to go all the way. It feels like he gets somewhere, but then goes to an extent and then just stops. But that doesn't stop Gary Oldman's portrayal. Here's the thing, between Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford, they are two great actors. They are two actors that were once at the top of their game. I mean, Gary Oldman, I mean, movies like him playing Commissioner Gordon in The Dark Knight, you know, and being nominated for an Oscar, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which was a great movie, by the way. And then having him play the bad guy in Air Force One alongside Harrison Ford, you know. I mean, Gary Oldman, he can definitely act. Oh, and I forgot another movie, The Professional, which is one that I did kind of forget about a little bit, but I mean, how can you pass up Gary Oldman's performance in The Professional? He was great, and I feel like he does try to bring on a little bit of his more, you know, stronger side. It feels like he's trying to pull off a Nick Cage in a lot of his movies. I think Gary Oldman can be like a Nick Cage, like a better Nick Cage, where, you know, he's just like, he loses his sanity, and he can just go off the page. And he does try to do that in this movie. But it feels like, I mean, I liked him in this movie, but at the same time, it felt like for a movie like this, it's just not what it exactly needs. And then Harrison Ford in this movie, he is kind of a little bit of a low-mannered guy, but still, it's not necessarily, it's like the kind of guy you want to root for or something like that. I mean, you have Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford, you know, just bickering at each other, and basically, you know, it feels like you liked their bickering, but it's really just, they're really just saying the same things over again. Basically, you know, you stole from me, and I'm going to steal from you, and all this crap. They're like children fighting over each other. You have a 70-year-old man versus a 50-something-year-old man, or whatever. I think he's like 55 now. Gary Oldman's like 55 or something like that. You know, they're like bickering at each other and all that. And you want to see the feud. It reminded me of Air Force One a little bit, but then again, it was like, well, it doesn't make up for the rest of the movie. You know, like I said, it's a forgettable movie. It's going to go right through your head. There's honestly no point in seeing this movie. It ain't going to do anybody justice. You don't really feel anything in this movie, but I'm not saying that this movie was terrible. I just didn't like this movie. It just wasn't a good movie for me, and for that, I'm probably going to give this movie a 4. I just don't feel anything for this movie. You know, it just goes right through your head. It just goes like inside one ear and then out the other. Literally, as I was watching this movie. You know, there are some parts that stuck with me, like Gary Oldman and Harrison Ford, you know, giving at least some of what they can get for a movie like this. But honestly, it's a movie that feels like, you know, you have the drama, you have it right there, but you're not trying to deliver in any way possible, and you're trying to dumb it down for the audience. And honestly, it feels emotionless. That's how some of his movies feel, like 21. It kind of feels a little bit emotionless at times. And that's how Paranoia felt a little bit. And when you have an emotionless movie, you're just going to be like sitting there all bored. You know, I mean, really, that's how you kind of want to feel in this movie. So definitely, if I have to recommend this movie to anyone, I would say just go watch Kick-Ass 2 or even Jobs anyway. I'd probably recommend this movie over Jobs, but that's just me. Now, I feel like I could give this Paranoia a little bit lower of a rating, but honestly, it wasn't exactly terrible. But that's just, it wasn't 2% for sure, like out of 100, but that's just me. Well, that's my take on Kick-Ass 2, Jobs, and Paranoia. Now, I actually will try to see if I am going to try to watch Lee Daniels' The Butler tonight, and hopefully do a review on it tomorrow. So hopefully I'll get that in, hopefully check that out. And just, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, tell all your friends. Hopefully I will see you sometime tomorrow. tomorrow. Oh, but before I go, I will try to say this, you know, just to be legitimately clear, you know, if like for the rest of the year, at least till next summer, you know, I will do I will do all my weekend videos on Saturdays for sure. And if not, I will be sorry about that. Just letting y'all know. But for sure, I'm going to try to do weekend videos every Saturday for the rest of my YouTube career, which honestly isn't lasting long. But for all my 11 subscribers out there, thank y'all so much for making me keep wanting to make videos and all that. And like I said, be sure to like, share, tell all your friends, blah, 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 blah. I will see you tomorrow. Bye.